Hello, everybody. Photography is a conversation between the photographer and the viewer. So my first task as a photographer is to understand what I want to say. Taking a photograph is a dance between my subconscious and conscious mind, between my visceral reaction to where I am and what I am experiencing, and the technical skills needed to capture both what is seen and what is felt. There is harmony and awe to be found in that dance. Here's the overriding principle. If you don't see beauty, then you cannot portray beauty. If you don't feel awe, then you cannot convey awe. If you don't understand what you want to say, then you will not be understood. It is both as simple and as complex as that. At the beginning of June, I visited a wilderness close to my home. It is the Malpais, or Badlands, that make up the foothills of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. This is what I am showing you now. In the distance are the Jemez Mountains, across the Rio Grande Valley. It is a place I sometimes go to photograph storms and sunsets, but I have found the Badlands themselves difficult to photograph in a meaningful way. So my goal this time was to find the beauty of the Badlands and bring it to the viewer. I went out in early June with my drone. I deliberately chose a time of stormy weather and hopefully dramatic lighting. Here are the best images of that day. I like these images, but even as I was taking them, I understood that I did not achieve my goal. The Malpais is simply the foreground in these images. These images are about the beauty and the chaos of the storm. However, as my drone was returning, I saw something interesting. In the distance were the Sangre de Cristo Mountains to the east. I liked the chocolate brown of the foothills, which gradually turned to dark green and blue as the land became less arid. I liked the folds and crevices of the sandstone, eroded remnants of the ancient seabed that was lifted more than a mile high by the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. I realized that I had been distracted by the sunset and the storm coming from the west. The photo I wanted was to the east. At home, I pored over the images I had taken and studied the topography maps. I decided to capture the sandhills lit by the sun to highlight their rugged topography. I was catching a glimmer of what I wanted to say. 3 days later, I returned. Here are the images from the day. I had captured the rugged topography, but the lighting was too harsh, and the compositions were poor. However, I noticed that, as the sun began to set, the interface between the sandhills still in light and those in shadow was beautiful. Back to analyzing my photos and topography maps. I now knew what I wanted to say, and I knew the lighting conditions and compositions I wanted. 3 days later, I thought I had the right conditions, and I returned. But the light from the setting sun never materialized. So I spent my time piecing together the topography in my mind and searching for the right compositions. I began to notice the network of arroyos, the dry creek beds that look like the veins and arteries of a living being. I think they are intricate and beautiful in their winding paths. I returned the next day. The forecast had predicted high clouds that cleared somewhat near sunset. This is what I needed to tell my story. Enough sunlight to highlight the folds and crevices of the sandstone, but not enough to overwhelm the image. Again, the cloud cover was much heavier than forecast. Sunset was coming soon, but only the peaks of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains were receiving direct sunlight. I took this image. I felt that I had the composition I wanted, but it lacked the dramatic lighting on the Badlands themselves. It was still not quite what I needed. And then it happened. With only a few minutes of light left, the setting sun began shining on the Badlands. I began to photograph as quickly as I could. And then something even more remarkable happened. The Sangre de Cristo Mountains are so named because rarely and fleetingly, the light from the setting sun turns the peaks of the mountains red-orange, which the Hispanic settlers likened to the blood of Christ. This is what I experienced on that evening in the last 5 minutes of sunlight. I was in the right place at the right time. Not because of skill, but simply a blessing, a matter of fortune. But I was also prepared because when it happened, I knew what I wanted to say. Here's my favorite photo of the Badlands, and here's what I hope it will say to some of those who view it. This was the ocean floor for many millennia. Now it mimics both the undulating crests and troughs of the ocean that created it and the mountains that raised it to such great heights. It is called Malpais because it is a place of seeming desolation, but it is a place that is both alive and full of life. The Malpais is beautiful in its vastness, its solitude, and its uniqueness. Thank you for watching my video.